today we're going to be going after Public Enemy, or in this case, Public Enema #1, as usual, Mr. fucking Razor Fist. Say what you will about the guy, I actually really have always loved his Metal Mythos series. Say what you will about that, and the whole drama between me and him and the retrospective thing and whatever. If he watches this, if you're gonna once again try to do the whole "oh, you just ripped me off" thing, yeah. How about the fact that we're both inspired by the same fucking guy, Ralph Vieira? Anyways, I love pretty much every single Metal Mythos episode, but there's one black mark, a big black eye. And that's the Iron Maiden Metal Mythos episode. The worst one of them all. Now, I initially didn't mind this episode. I thought it was pretty good. I was excited when it came out. But, it's pretty much aged like Bill Clinton's dick. Now, let's just set the record straight right away. Everything I don't talk about, because I'm not just going to play the whole fucking video, because it's like an hour. I'm just selectively taking bits that I want to take issue with. But anything I don't talk about is stuff I either agree with or there's, no problem with it. He states an opinion. I maybe disagree with it. Who cares? It's a fucking opinion. In fact, being a hipster and going after shit that's popular is fine. But from CNN-style selective editing to just direct contradictions as well as just blatant fucking lies, this episode is more than just fuck-ups in, reading like a Wikipedia page or something, which is what I do all the time. In fact, I actually went directly to the guy and told him straight up about all these fuck-ups in the episode, and he even re-uploaded the episode. I was like, okay, here we go. And he re-uploaded it because copyright issues. But he didn't change fucking thing in the episode. I've tried to reach out to the guy multiple times and provide criticisms to videos like this and some other things. But as we all know, Mr. Wannabe Spoonie, but basically just a reincarnation of Steve Shives when you criticize him, or even Spoonie when you criticize him, you end up on a fucking wall bigger than the Vietnam Wall block list. I mean, when he gets to every album from the band, he says something stupid for each one and then drags it on forever. A majority of each review and introspective look back into history, it's just bloated with him complaining about something completely meaningless for fucking ever, making this episode completely unwatchable until about halfway through when he finally lets off a little bit. Now, feel free to go after all my retrospective episodes where I make major amounts of fuck-ups. There's a plethora of mistakes, because I need some goddamn money.
You've heard the story in every tongue by now. Band releases groundbreaking first album, forever changes genre. Band tours so long and hard in support of said album that they yank out their creative lumbar and wind up phoning it the fuck in the following release, if not their entire career. And then there's Killers. To my mind, and those of many others, perhaps the finest single work of Iron Maiden's justifiably celebrated career. Killers is Maiden's first and perhaps only all-killer, no-filler outing.
The consensus for what an album filler usually is a song that's almost never played live, or a song that was never a single, or was never a music video, or never just generally by the fans considered to be a classic song. So every Iron Maiden classic epic song on the album, so Alexander the Great, that's considered a classic song, so that's not really a filler. And then Run to the Hills and Stranger in a Strange Land, their music videos, especially Stranger in a Strange Land, not many people talk about it, it's rarely played live, it's a music video, right? And then I would even throw in a couple songs as not being fillers if they're classic fucking songs, Children of the Damned, stuff like that. Problem is that he goes into this long rant about, sophomore slumps and how these bands kind of just throw shit together for a second album. It's funny that he knows the history so little that he doesn't know that that's what actually happened with Killers. Basically, for the first album, they had pretty much every song that was on that first album, as well as almost every single song from Killers, pretty much played in the live set randomly. There was all these songs that were written, they were pretty much trying everything. But everything that ended up on the first album was all the stuff that the band members liked the most, and what the fans gave the biggest reactions to, maybe minus Strange World. I think they said that Wrathchild and another song was supposed to be on it as well. And there was only maybe one or two songs that were written for the Killers sessions. but the rest of the songs are objectively leftover songs. Objectively kind of filler. They're objectively kind of slapped together. Completely unordinary for them, without an epic song. A lot of the songs are not structured like verse, chorus, instrumental section, guitar solo like Iron Maiden songs usually are. Most of the songs on here are never played live. And maybe some were played around like Killer's tour and Number of the Beast, but after that, almost none of this material is played live. And considering that these were mostly leftovers from the first album, it's kind of mostly filler, but it's still killers.
And I've had it up to 7 feet above my head with the proclamations of Paul Di'Anno being washed up and sounding nothing like himself. This feel like walking around sounds a fuck of a lot more like this. Than this. Sounds even remotely like this.
Paul Di'Anno nowadays sounds like complete fucking shit. And to be fair, Bruce Dickinson sounds like complete shit now too. And it kind of sounded that way throughout the whole 2000s with this strainy, god-awful high notes that trail off into nothing, trail off into just sounding like a goddamn grandma. But even Bruce, at his worst, which is now, still sounds eons better than from the early 2000s to now, Paul Di'Anno, which just sounds like a fucking yodeling mountain climber. There's no way he watched that entire live video of Paul Di'Anno to get the end of that song where he sounded halfway decent without hearing the rest of the god-awful performance. He must have done that just to deliberately prop up his hero Paul Di'Anno, and it makes his entire argument and rant completely nullified and weak.
I remain supremely convinced to this day that this one album has turned untold millions of people off to heavy metal forever, because it's treated as a touchstone of the genre, and to be perfectly honest and upfront, unlike every other goddamn metal publication in existence, it fucking isn't. It's not that Number of the Beast is merely overrated, it's that it's just not that good.
Now, beyond this being an edgy hipster opinion, which is funny because he always loves to say how he's the slayer of hipsters, even though he kind of is one, I don't care. You can hate, love, whatever the fuck you want. But Number of the Beast turns people off from metal. Look, it's traditional metal with some of the biggest hits of the genre. The biggest hits that pretty much brought in a majority of Iron Maiden's fucking fan base. You know, a lot of these idiots say Iron Maiden was never on the radio or never got MTV play. And a vast majority of their radio and MTV play was from shit like Run to the Hills. I think it's overrated all you want. I've never heard once someone say, I fucking hated that album, but I love the rest of Iron Maiden's albums. And never have I ever heard someone say, I don't like metal because I heard Number of the Beast, but maybe he was just making a joke. But I don't see what is... It's not even funny, it's stupid. And when it comes to filler, I know we talked about it on Killers, but we have to bring it back here. Because he makes a big point that the majority of this album is filler. And you could make that argument, you know, Invaders and Gangland are never played live, and a lot of the fans really hate those songs. Steve Harris really hates those songs. But a lot of these songs are classic, regular live songs, and some of them are just considered fan favorites.
The Prisoner, puerile pop metal, filler in the fourth degree. In fact, it's at long last on track 4 that we finally hit a decent tune, and what a tune. The immutable classic that is 22 Acacia Avenue. The Number of the Beast title track. Listen, folks, if it wasn't attached to a classic music video from heavy metal's boom period, you fuckwads would be calling this out for exactly what it is. Forgettable ass filler!
Now, 22 Acacia Avenue is been played about as much as the fucking Prisoner has been. So if the Prisoner is filler, then so is 22 Acacia Avenue. They're both considered fan favorites, though. Now, the whole thing about Number of the Beast being filler and no one would like it if it didn't have the music video or whatever. It was also a radio single, and it was a successful one. So that means that without the classic music video, people still love the song, you fucking idiot. And you know, there's always been music videos that have been to songs that the fans didn't give a shit about, that were bad selections as a music video, as a single and whatnot. In fact, Iron Maiden has some of those, especially stuff like Holy Smoke. But guess what? That has a classic music video, and people don't like that fucking song. So, I don't know what the hell you're talking about. You can have a classic music video all the hell you want, but what matters is the music. And people like that fucking song, you idiot.
If Killers had benefited from 2 snazzy videos in heavy rotation on MTV, it would have been the first #1 Maiden record, and Slumber of the Beast would be in a fucking dustbin. The truth hurts. Wear a fucking cup. Next.
Now, I agree with half of this, that Killers would and could have been a #1 album if it did have a little bit more promotion, and that Paul Di'Anno really did help spearhead the band, and that Bruce Dickinson gets way too much of that credit. But at the same time, Number of the Beast would not have sold less or been a bargain bin album than Killers. Number of the Beast, no matter what, is more marketable than Killers because, first of all, it got purchased more because of the album burning thing by those churches that protested the band for the album title Number of the Beast. And then for the fact that ever since they had Bruce Dickinson in the band, until the modern stuff, they always were more focused on being on the radio compared to the more punk and heavy metal stuff of the Paul Di'Anno era. So to say that Killers is somehow more marketable to the mainstream than Number of the Beast, what song would have been a big radio hit? Wrathchild? I mean, maybe, but Run to the Hills is a metal classic mainstay. Number of the Beast is a mainstay.
I will say it now and repeat it without reservation for all time. There has been no greater musical downgrade in Maiden history than the trade-off of Clive Burr for the massively inferior Nico I Know Exactly One Drum Beat McBrain.
2 minutes to midnight. All the pain that you feel the same as me, and I dream of the rain.
Not Blaze Bayley, not Yannick Gers, fucking no one.
I swear to God, Razorfist picks the dumbassest hills to die on and will not fucking budge. Now, it's one thing to say something wrong, but just double down and even triple down on it. I mean, Jesus Christ. Look, I prefer Clive Burr as well, and, well, I don't know, it's kind of a either or, to be honest. Clive Burr is more intense of a drummer, and I love some intense drumming. But literally no one but you has ever fucking said that Nico is a bad drummer. Drummers from the 80s, drummers that you worshipped, used to stand behind Nico to watch what he did because of the intricate shit he would do. And then you say he mostly only plays ever one drum beat per song. Even if he did do that, it would then be Steve's fault because Steve writes the fucking rhythms. They talked about it in the early days documentaries where, you know, Nico was kind of concerned because Steve would write a crazy bass line, and he told Nico, you have to match it. That's how Where Eagles Dare came about. That's why it was such a hard song to play. But then everything Steve wrote after that point was fucking slow gallops. What the hell do you think he's going to play? Now, with this selective editing thing, he pretty much only sampled out songs that he uses simple rock beats on. And that's pretty much every Iron Maiden goddamn single or commercially focused song. That's most metal-focused commercial songs. I mean, I love Judas Priest more as well, but Jesus Christ, to then ignore the Pedo Stash Man and his simplistic drumming and Judas Priest in the 80s, I mean, come on. Traditional metal is all about the goddamn rock beat. And once again, that's only on the fucking singles. Because just look at the X Factor. I mean, whatever you think about that album, the drumming on it's fantastic. It's very progressive in the way the drumming is written and everything. Nico could actually throw in some of his own 2 cents in the writing, and was able to come up with like odd time signatures and places and shit that Clive never even did. I think Clive is an awesome, intense drummer, but to say that Nico is worse than the shitty, sloppy, guitar-slinging moron.
Worse still, apart from some vague bullshit about possible substance abuse problems, which if Bruce Dickinson's stories are to be believed, he suffered from just as vociferously.
Now, I think I know what he's trying to say here, that getting rid of Clive was BS for the reasons that they provided if Bruce Dickinson was, whatever. But, I don't know, I think this point is too stupid because after this clip, he then proceeds to play this lengthy story about how Bruce partied with Ozzy once and made it sound like, if Clive was a drunkard, what about Bruce? But that's like hardly a point. That's like a non-point. So I don't know where the fuck he was going with that shit. If anything, it makes it look like he's trying to argue that Bruce was an alcoholic, even though he had a funny drunken story with Ozzy once.
There's been no viable explanation given for the move. Most disturbingly of all, from the outside looking in, Nico McBrain didn't just wander the fuck in off the street, he was Maiden's roadie. You do the fucking math. Nico McBrain played backstage politics to steal Clive's gig, which if true is fucking horseshit, and fuck you, Nico, for doing so. That said, Nico goes a cut above what he would do going forward.
Now, here and there, the band has actually revealed what happened to Clive, but you had to do some digging. What I've gathered is that he had to return home because I think it was his father died. And on the road, he was having some problems here and there, but so was the rest of the band. But what really happened is that Nico was filling in for him once he had to go back because his dad died. And I think he just clicked with the other guys more on like a friend level in that, once Nico came in, everyone in the band was like really good friends with each other, but Clive was kind of more introverted and, everyone was more like this is a job and we're not really that great of friends. So I think it's just on a personal level, Nico clicked so much more with them and maybe they preferred him as a musician. And then Steve made the final decision, I think as well as a couple other members, but you could tell it was mostly because Steve liked him better as a guy and then got rid of Clive. It had nothing to do with the whole him being a drunkard on tour. I agree that that's bullshit that they still claim that, even after he died. But it wasn't Nico playing backstage politics. And I like that at least he states that Nico's drumming is better in the 80s than later on, and that most of his criticism of the one beat to rule them all is kind of later on. But once again, the problem is that it's Steve who writes the fucking rhythms in the band. And Nico's drumming around this time was incredibly fucking tasty. And then there's this part in the episode that I don't even want to show. It's when he's talking about Live After Death, he literally spends the entire time, a lengthy amount of fucking time, not talking about the live album, but talking about when he bought it and found an old report card in there that had like a bunch of F's on it and then talked about how awesome Arizona is. I'm not even kidding. It wasn't even really that funny. I don't know what the fuck. Learn to edit, man. I seriously felt like I was watching a Cover Killer Nation review where he doesn't even talk about the album. He talks about, I went into the mountains, and I was hiking in the mountains. It's like, get the fuck on with it.
Somewhere in Time is the absolute apex of the art form. As it was written in the very eye of the very same synth guitar tornado that yielded Judas Priest's oft-reviled Turbo record, Maiden elected to take a slightly different tack to experimenting with emerging technology. Put it in service to the scorching twin guitar harmonies and reverb-drenched operatic vocals that had traditionally been the mark of Maiden.
See, there's nothing wrong with what he says here. In fact, I kind of agree with it. But then there's this.
If only the love-in could have lasted forever.
You can't play heavy metal with synthesizers.
When I first encountered 7 synth rock ballad of a 7 synth rock ballad, I thought it was merely an incremental disappointment relative to the masterpiece that preceded it. In the intervening decade, I've come to actively despise every groove of the vinyl it's fucking printed on.
Now, first of all, once again, if you don't like the album, fine. But if you hate the album because of the synths and made it a point to make fun of it, then why did you not have a complaint about Somewhere in Fucking Time? Picky choosy, huh? Not to mention, this album doesn't even have synthesizers on it. Like the last album did, which had guitar synths and whatnot, and bass synthesizers. This album just has keyboards. And if you had bothered to not be a lazy fuck and to even just go to the Wikipedia page, you could have figured that out. Which, if anything, a keyboard is less intrusive than guitar and bass synthesizers to fucking begin with. Now, I've heard this album be called a bunch of dumbass things like power metal and prog metal and fucking pop metal. None of these make any goddamn sense. It's just traditional metal with some keyboards on it, alright? Just good old classic traditional metal that has a concept album, but fucking synth rock, really? I mean, you're closer with progressive metal. See, my problem is that you can dislike the album, in fact hate it, but your reasoning behind it in your explanation doesn't make any sense. You were better off to just say, I hate the album, move on. Wasted Years is probably closer to a fucking synth rock ballad than a lot of the songs on here.
And it's entirely down to the band's steadily encroaching ego.
The only difference between us and the audience is that we just happen to be standing up there playing the instruments, really. I mean, as far as our tastes in music are concerned and our attitude to things in general, I think we're pretty much the same, really.
There's a lot of things in Maiden that you can't do because you're in Iron Maiden and because we have a core audience that's pretty conservative about its musical tastes.
And this is the thing that I actually directly went to Razorfist with, and his claim was, well, I just download interview compilations and then sift through them. Well, that second interview is not from 1988. It's from the early 90s, when Bruce Dickinson is talking about leaving the band. You see, the full context to that is he's saying, I'm leaving the band because I want to do a bunch of different things, and Iron Maiden fans, they're more conservative with their taste in the fact that they don't want to hear me do a bunch of bullshit that's not Iron Maiden, that's not metal, and he just personally really wanted to do his own thing, which there's nothing wrong with that. But he takes that intentionally out of context to make it look like he's saying, Iron Maiden fans only want to hear one thing and we do what we want and blah 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 blah, which is not even what was being fucking said at all. And he could say all he wants is, it was in a compilation and I didn't know the year. But he would have known that it was that interview about him talking about him leaving, because 5 seconds after that bit he plays, he says, and that's why I'm leaving the band. You didn't leave the band in 88.
You don't want to upset people for the sake of it, so I figured that it would be better for me to leave the band.
And he still never fixed this glaring, intentional error just to take down Bruce a peg. But if you're going to take him down, at least do it the right way instead of deliberately making it look like he shat on the fans when he didn't.
Maiden took a few plagiaristic pages from the modeled tome of the witch. Ah, fuck it, they stole some shit.
Count the heads of those unborn, yet cursed ones, I'll find them all. And if you die by your own hand,
Now this claim is a stupid, predictable Razorfist rant where he usually just randomly accuses something of plagiarism or it doesn't make any sense. Oh, their nicknames are both the Wolf, therefore plagiarism, and they have white hair. Even though the stories aren't the same and their character aspects aren't the same, and blah 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 is plagiarism. He has to make it a point that everything is plagiaristic. Even with me, I guess I am plagiarizing him. Everything is plagiaristic, even though if you want to go by his logic of everything being plagiarism, then everything he's ever done is plagiarism. Spoonie plagiarism, fucking Ralph Vieira plagiarism, fucking Dennis Miller plagiarism, whatever. I'm just throwing your own logic back at you. But the problem with accusing this song, Moonchild, my favorite song of the album, of being plagiarism is retarded, because let's be honest here for a second, there are only so many notes and only so many riffs in the world that you can write. And what he did was go after a song that has a riff that is so typical and done all the time, especially in 80s heavy metal. The chord progression used in both these songs is so common, even before either of these songs ever came out, that there's no point in going after it. And those two riffs aren't even identical anyways. They're still different enough Not to mention, this same chord progression is heavily used in Wasp's material in the late 80s and pretty much beyond that point. But he never wanted to seem to mention that in the Wasp episode he did.
Count the heads of those unborn, the accursed ones, find them all. And if you die by your own hand, and soldiers keep coming like warriors that die, but ganglands alive when mothers cry.
Not to mention the new Maiden frontman's ongoing vocal, not to mention temperament problems on tour.
Fucking soldier! Right, a fucking soldier! Can you see? Can you see who it fucking is? Get him! Fucking get him! Can you see him? Can you see? Kill him! Fucking get him!
Now, once again, he's taking something out of context. Sure, that Blaze clip of him freaking out, "I fucking told you," is hilarious to this day. But to say that that was him being erratic on the road and they're like, "Oh my god, he's freaking out on the fans," you don't even know the context. And once again, you were too lazy to even go in the comments section to even lazily go to the comments section to figure out what happened, by the way. But even Blaze Bayley has backed up in interviews what has happened, and you could see closely before he freaks out what had actually happened. What happened was is Steve kept getting spat at, not Blaze. And if I'm remembering right, someone like hacked a loogie into Steve's mouth. And now spitting's one thing, but doing shit like that can actually cause shit like tetanus, I believe. So that's a major fucking no-no. And if I'm also remembering right, Blaze Bayley at that point, right before he freaked out, was already pointing at the guy saying, "Knock it the fuck off." And it was Steve that cut off the song. It was Steve that got mad. Blaze spoke for him because he had the microphone. Now, the rest of the video is mostly him complaining about modern Maiden, which, look, I have no problem with. He's stating an opinion. In fact, this time around, he doesn't even spurg out about it. He doesn't dig his heels in the dirt and say a bunch of stupid shit that has no facts behind it or deceptively edits facts. He just says, you know, "I don't like these albums." I mean, I don't blame them. They basically turn into fucking elongated intro, strainy chorus retardation metal, trying to pretend to be prog. And this is coming from someone that likes almost every Not You album. What pisses me off about this, and where I have to actually hit the brakes and defend Razorfist for a second, nobly might I add, is that in the comment section of the Metal Mythos, the one thing that people complain the most about is his fucking opinions on the new albums. He doesn't state anything incorrect, but all the idiots are like, "You just don't understand music. You just don't, you're not a musician, you're not smart, you're a child. You weren't there in the 80s, you were a sperm in Eddie Trunk's ball sack." Now, enough of all the bitching. Let's actually end this on a high note that almost saves the entire episode.
Before we shove off, I want everyone to understand I'm not taking shots here. The most heinous offense you can commit against another human being is to have no standards whatsoever for them.
Honestly, couldn't have said it better myself.
Subscribe to the Downfall Network.